Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to talk about the inside of the Capitol Hill Massacre. But before that, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Let's start. Before the blood, before the sirens, before 6 lives were stolen, there was music, there was laughter, there was trust. March 24th, 2006, Seattle, Washington. The city pulses with life. Ravers gather at a local venue for a night of escape, music, and freedom. Among them, artists, students, drifters, and dreamers. One of them is Kyle Huff. He didn't belong, not really. 20 years old, reserved, observing more than dancing. He didn't smile, he didn't connect, and he didn't speak much. Kyle had come to Seattle from Montana, a troubled young man with a fascination for weapons and a deep, quiet rage. His online presence was sparse, but what little existed was disturbing. Posts about violence, discussions on message boards about alienation. He'd once been arrested for destroying public property with a shotgun, but no one thought he'd become the story. After the rave, a group of friends opened their home on Capitol Hill to keep the party going. It was casual, no guest list, just good vibes and open doors. Kyle followed, not invited, not welcome, but no one said no. They didn't know they had just let the devil in. It was early morning, March 25th, 2006. The after-party on Capitol Hill was winding down. Laughter still lingered. Music was low. A few guests were asleep. Others lounged in corners, peaceful, vulnerable. At 7 a.m., Kyle Huff returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. He carried a bag filled with ammunition, a pump-action shotgun, .40 caliber handgun, over 300 rounds. He didn't speak, didn't knock. He opened the door and stepped into the house like he belonged there. Moments later, the silence shattered. Without warning, Kyle raised his shotgun and fired. First into the hallway, then the living room. One guest fell, then another. The screams grew louder, confused, terrified. Some ran, some froze. One young woman, still in costume from the rave, was gunned down as she shielded a friend. Others tried to hide in closets, behind furniture, under beds. The house had become a labyrinth of fear. The shots rang out across the block. Neighbors called 911. Police were dispatched within minutes, but the damage was already done. In less than 5 minutes, 6 people were dead, 2 more wounded, and Kyle Huff, still armed, walked out onto the porch, shotgun in hand. As officers arrived and shouted commands, Huff said nothing. Then, he turned the gun on himself. One final shot, one final silence. The Capitol Hill Massacre was over, but the nightmare was just beginning. The street was chaos. Neighbors huddled behind windows. Yellow tape stretched around the house. Flashing lights reflected off blood-streaked pavement. And inside was horror. First responders were trained for trauma. But not this. Officers entered the home and were met with silence. And then a scene they would carry with them forever. Bodies lay scattered across rooms, still glowing from the soft blue lights of the after-party. Plastic cups, confetti, and pool noodles surrounded the dead. What should have been a safe space had become a slaughterhouse. In a back hallway, officers found a woman huddled under a table, shaking uncontrollably. She whispered one word, "Why?" over and over again. It was all she could say. The wounded were rushed to Harborview Medical Center. Phones rang. Parents were called. Friends posted frantic messages online. And slowly, the names of the dead began to surface. Melissa, Suzanne, Christopher, Jason, Jeremy, Justin. 6 lives, creative, vibrant, kind, gone in minutes. As the sun rose over Seattle, the media arrived. The headlines were immediate. Mass shooting at Capitol Hill party. Reporters searched for meaning, police searched for motives, and the community searched for a way to breathe again. To understand the Capitol Hill Massacre, you have to understand the man who caused it. Kyle Huff, a name now carved into Seattle's darkest history. But who was he before the blood? Born September 22, 1977, raised in Montana, quiet, shy, polite, on paper, unremarkable. But even early on, there were cracks beneath the surface. Kyle had a twin brother, Kane. The two were close, but Kyle was different, withdrawn, insecure, struggling to connect in school, to make friends, to be seen. After high school, Kyle drifted, no clear path. In 2000, he was arrested for using a shotgun to destroy public art. The charges were dropped, but the signs were there: anger, obsession, control. In 2005, he moved to Seattle, searching for community, for belonging. He found the rave scene bright, open, loud, everything he wasn't, but he watched, studied, and grew resentful. In his final days, Kyle left behind a chilling note, typed on a laptop. It read, "I can't really explain why I'm doing this. I've been thinking about it for a long time." No remorse, no apology, just silence and death. He didn't snap. He planned. He bought the ammunition. He wrote the note. And then, he waited, until the doors were open, until no one would stop him. When the gunfire stopped, the echo remained. In the hours that followed, grief rolled across Seattle like a black tide, slow, cold, and crushing. Within 24 hours, the sidewalk outside the house became sacred ground. Flowers, handwritten notes, glow sticks, raver bracelets, and silence, deep, aching silence. The victims were young, vibrant, full of light. They were artists, musicians, dreamers. Their absence left a hole not just in homes, but in the heart of an entire subculture. Funerals came quickly, some private, others public. Standing room only. The city wept together. Strangers became family, and Capitol Hill was never the same again. The rave community, often misunderstood, often judged, stood tall. They marched. They held space. They reminded the world these were not victims of a lifestyle, but victims of a monster. 6 lights were stolen, but in their names hundreds more were lit. In parks, in clubs, in quiet living rooms. The grief became a bond, a vow. This would not be forgotten. By March 26, the world knew. Mass shooting in Seattle. Rave turns deadly. Gunman kills 6, then self. Headlines flashed across every major outlet. But the truth got blurred. The media seized on the scene. Rave culture became the scapegoat. Neon costumes, dance music. They were easier to question than one man's rage. Easier than asking how he got the guns. Kyle Huff legally purchased his weapons in Montana. Despite a prior arrest, despite mental health red flags, nothing stopped him. And in the aftermath, that silence was louder than any scream. Local officials made statements. Vigils were held. But the deeper questions, the ones about access to firearms, about identifying isolated individuals, about mental health infrastructure, they faded fast. There was no policy shift, no reform, just pain, then politics, then quiet, as if the story had ended. But for Seattle, and for the families, it never had. The bullets stopped, the cameras moved on, but for the survivors, the nightmare never really ended. Some were physically wounded, others carried scars that didn't bleed. Nightmares, triggers, the sound of footsteps, the creak of a door, even laughter, once healing, now cut like a knife. Therapy helped some, art helped others, music, community, silence. They tried everything, but grief is not linear, and trauma has a habit of whispering when you least expect it. The rave community, once seen as fringe, showed the world how to heal. They danced, they created, they remembered, and they refused to let the narrative end in darkness. Some survivors now speak at schools, some became therapists, some disappeared quietly, choosing solitude. There is no right way to survive, only the courage to keep going. We've traced the horror, we've met the victims, we've looked into the eyes of the killer, we've walked the rooms he desecrated, heard the silence that followed, and now, we ask the question that echoes in every tragedy like this: could it have been stopped? Mass shootings are not random. They are the final chapter of stories we often fail to read. Isolation, obsession, easy access to weapons, missed signals, broken systems. Cal Huff left warnings, but no one saw them for what they were. Or maybe, no one wanted to. And 6 beautiful lives paid the price. We can't rewrite that day, but we can remember it, not just as a tragedy, but as a call to listen, to speak up, to care, to fight for systems that protect, not just react. Melissa Lynn Moore, Suzanne Thorne, Christopher Williamson, Jeremy Martin, Justin Schwartz, Jason Travers, 6 lives frozen in time. May their memories spark change. May we carry them forward. And may we never forget what happened on March 25th. What is your thought on this? Leave comment down below.